My name is Dan Young, and welcome to the Millionaire Code podcast. I'm a self-made guy that has made multi-million-dollar businesses from scratch. There's no way I could have done it without the help of mentors who provided me with the wisdom and guidance to help me create the formula for success. Each week on my podcast, I'm going to interview a hugely successful business person that will provide you their secrets to success, and that way can act as your mentor too. I can't wait to share their stories and takeaways with you. Welcome to Dan's Millionaire Code. Hey everybody, Dan here with Dan's Millionaire Code, and today's guest is awesome. In fact, Bryan Miller came on with his mom Gail and his sister Karen, and they were one of our first podcast guests. And thank you, because I mean, what you've done, what your family has built is incredible. In fact, probably I'd say you guys are the most powerful, impactful guests that we've actually had ever. And coming up, bringing your family on was just so wonderful. So we're super grateful for that.
Well, thank you.
Every week, as you guys know, I bring in someone who's changing the world in a wonderful, wonderful way. Not just through financial means, but also through helping people from the inside out and inside their heads. So today's guest, Bryan Miller, is doing some amazing stuff. But let me just, those of you that don't know Bryan, I want to give you kind of a quick overview of kind of what he's about. He's my friend, unstoppable world changer. Bryan Miller is a writer, coach, philanthropist. Within his family enterprise, you've probably heard of this enterprise in Utah and abroad, is the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies. He serves on the board of directors. He's the executive director of culture. Outside of that family enterprise, he's also president of a consultancy group that serves the need of legacy families and helping position themselves for multi-generational success. This is actually not so recently, because this is my intro from before, but you launched the School for Good Living, which has been around for a little bit now. A coaching company dedicated to helping individuals live extraordinary lives, happiness, meaning, and contribution. So pretty amazing stuff, and I've been down to your place. It's incredible. So let's talk about maybe just a few things a little bit. So in the previous podcast, your family talked about, and yourself, about the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies.
Yeah.
And so, guys, go watch that if you want to know what's going on there. That's pretty similar, and it continues to scale, and it's amazing. And if you're seeing a movie, buying a car, watching a basketball game, that's what that's all about. But let's talk about School of Good Living and what's going on there and the other projects you got going.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I love to. The School for Good Living is something that I created really as a way for me, first of all, to figure out who am I, what do I want, why am I here? The kind of big questions that we all ask, and that I've discovered, I don't think we'll be happy. We won't be satisfied until we find and live answers to those that are really self-created. So, there's a common saying in the personal growth world about we teach what we need to learn. Mm-hmm. And the School for Good Living is certainly that for me, but then also sharing that with other people, because I know, again, we all ask these questions.
Mm-hmm. And you've got a pretty good following there now. It continues to scale. What's the big thing for people that are just getting introduced to the concept of what you're doing here? What's the big demo, or do you have a certain demographic of student that joins that?
Yeah. Really, what I've discovered is that there's basically two kinds of people that we're attracting and serving. There's people who are successful but not yet satisfied. So, people who've either started their own thing, their own business, or they have climbed the corporate ladder. They've checked all the boxes. They're able to take the vacations and drive a nice car. And it's kind of why am I not happy yet? They think that they'll have arrived, but they're not there yet. So that's really one kind of person. Honestly, there's another, though. There's people who are in transition.
Okay.
Life is, of course, a series of transitions, but people who have either gone through something like a divorce or a job loss or retirement, and now, again, they're asking, who am I in this phase of life? And what do I want? So that's actually, there's this, I suppose, these two kinds of people, the successful, not yet satisfied, the people in the middle of major life transitions. Then there's another kind of person that we're attracting and serving, which is those who also want to be coaches.
Oh, okay. Got that.
So that's it. And really looking at the School for Good Living as the exploration of a few questions. What does it mean to live a good life? That's one. Okay. How can we do it?
You take notes here.
Is two. And three is, how can we help others do it? because ultimately we all want to contribute, we all want meaning, we all want our lives to matter. And those, if we're even in a place where we're able to ask those questions, it's pretty fortunate, that we're not dealing with survival concerns of what am I going to eat, or, how am I going to get the medication I need or my family needs. If we're here in the developed world, these questions that are probably closer to the needs of the spirit, meaning, contribution, self-expression, growth, connection, these kinds of things. And so that's ultimately what the School for Good Living is about.
So give us an example, a little taste sample, though, of how some of that training works. How is it structured? And you have the face-to-face, and then you also have a remote. Give us an idea.
So what I've created is it's a 9-month online personal leadership program.
Okay.
So it's really for people to go through at their own pace and really work through 17 different courses.
Wow.
That are things like, what do I want? What are the outcomes that I'm willing to commit my life to? Instead of living in a fog, Then there's emotions, emotional mastery. What is it that drives me? Really gaining an understanding and a mastery over that. There's things like values. Values are easy to talk about, but for many people, much harder to live.
Mm-hmm.
They're very abstract. So really getting into the nuts and bolts of what is it that I'm willing to orient my life around. So there's a whole set of things that fall into this, what I call the power section. And that is really oriented around the idea that we all have genius, but we don't all tap into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a power section. Then it moves into productivity. Now that we've found our genius, how do we live it? How do we share it with others? And so that goes into things like, how do you manage your time and your energy? How do you create alignment in your life? How do you create space so you can do the great work that you're capable of? Mm-hmm. So that's the second section. And the third section is peace. So say that you've achieved at a very high level. How do you go beyond the success and the accomplishment, especially the material, and find the lasting peace and satisfaction that's available? What that looks like is, how do you practice gratitude beyond simply being a concept? How do you live mindfully in the present moment? How do you forgive? How do you love? How do you make an intimate relationship last? And how do you make it passionate and fulfilling? Not just, a lot of people married for a long time. A lot of people divorced, we know that too. Mm-hmm. But how do you remain married and have it be something that you enjoy? So these are the kinds of things that, there's no simple answer, but there are best practices. That's why this whole curriculum is called Life's Best Practices.
Life's Best Practices. Now, is this all based from your personal challenges in life? And because you've had some good times, crazy times,
sure.
Tough times.
We all have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm fortunate, as the son of self-made billionaire entrepreneur parents, to have the financial means, to have the freedom, the resources to be able to travel the world and learn from some of the top teachers and coaches and thinkers. And that's what I've always been a learner. I've always been a learning nerd. And to be able to really focus on that intensely over the last decade, as I mentioned just a moment earlier, I've myself felt a deep sense of meaninglessness, and I didn't know who I was or what I wanted. And so again, going and learning from people like Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield and Werner Erhard and Sadhguru, and Marshall Goldsmith, many, many people who are at the top of their fields, and to be able to, in some cases, be mentored by them personally, one-on-one, other cases, participating in their programs, even helping them to produce their programs. So I've learned not only what's their content, but how do they organize, how do they market, and that's where this is first, this idea of don't teach theory. Mm-hmm. So have I been able to apply it in my own life and have it yield results? Yes. And second is, as I share it with other people, do they report that it makes a difference for them? Mm-hmm. And it's not a religion. It's not an algorithm that do this and you'll always get this result, because there's no one size fits all. Mm-hmm. But as I mentioned, there are best practices. So yeah, that's how this has come together, and it continues to grow and evolve.
It's kind of interesting, myself, we grew up, we were like really poor, and we, started this company and did a bunch of different things, and here we are in this podcast. But what's interesting for a lot of people, there's this stigma that people who are successful are snobby, jerks, flipping you off, cutting you off in traffic.
Some of them are. Some of them maybe.
But there's this stereotypical thing that's going on there. And what's interesting is this, and this is why I love you so much, man, because when we first met and became friends and things like that, we met at that Water Fusions place, got a couple, health vitamin drinks and stuff. And people go, who's that guy?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I mean, and when they see you and they meet you, they're like, that's a pretty cool dude. You know, that dude seems so, well, just seeing you, just a normal dude. In fact, how you carry yourself, how you dress, and how you communicate with people would think you're some sort of like monk or Jedi. But it's kind of weird because people would have no idea of kind of like some of the things that you're working on.
Yeah.
And those kind of things. You're really super humble, and that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
And in fact, my preconception before meeting you was like, how's this guy going to be? Is he going to be Mr. like intense, money only, deal guy?
Yeah.
And you're like the complete opposite of that. Like you're really into helping people and helping them heal and those kind of things. And that's kind of interesting though, because you know, public persona, as we talked about in the other podcast, people think, you know, people with means and people who have built something would have a completely different thing. And what's really interesting, this is kind of a third party observation though, you are significantly different than a lot of your siblings in your attitude and in the way that you interact. It's pretty different. It's cool.
Yeah. How do you think I'm different? Maybe we should stop the recording.
Well, there's a certain level of humility and warmth and love, and there doesn't feel like there is a PR shield as much. It feels like you're willing to be authentic and genuine, and it doesn't really matter who the person that you're talking to is, right? Yeah. Whether it's a girl or kid or boy getting started with their own company or anything, like you're just like willing to give that time and energy.
Yeah, well, that's something I saw with my dad, where he would say. Even though, of course, he grew what today is, but by the way, today is the 11th anniversary of his passing.
Wow.
So today, February 20th, he passed away 11 years ago in 2009. But one of the things that he would tell us, because he was very much a teacher, that he would actually sit us down. He started a regular series of family meetings. Every week we would convene around the kitchen table at my parents' home. And I remember the first day we did that, he gave us all a spiral bound notebook and he said, you're going to want to take notes, So he was always very thoughtful and very deliberate in what he would teach. And one of the things that he would say is, I want you to live and act in such a way that if we lost everything, which could happen anytime, right? From economics to competition to government regulation, there's no certain future.
It's true.
So he would say, I want you to live and act as though, we could lose everything. And if we did, that the people who work for us or people who do business with us, that they would still want to interact with you, and just that kind of humility. And what was funny, by the way, he was so competitive afterward, he would say, but if we did lose everything and I was on the street corner selling apples, I'm still going to sell more apples than anybody else. So he had this combination of humility and drive that was really remarkable. And of course, I know we all learn so much from our parents, but watching my dad is a big part of the reason I do the work I do, which is watching him at the end of his life. And I always thought that I would just get a call one day and learn he had died of a heart attack while at his desk because he spent so much time there and he pushed himself so hard. He woke early, got little sleep, didn't exercise, had a poor diet, didn't see the doctor, was under a lot of stress, like a lot of things that for any of us, if that's our mode of living, it's going to catch up to us. And so eventually he did have a heart attack. And although it wasn't fatal, it was the beginning of the end. He spent about a year and a half then in a pretty intense decline of his health. And I remember seeing him in the hospital after he'd had a surgery, having his legs amputated due to complications from diabetes. And that moment changed me. Just seeing him on the gurney, seeing him in his hospital gown, it was such a contrast to the person I'd always known to be so powerful and so in control. He was always the kind of person that if he was in a room, like you knew it, you could feel it, And after that, obviously, anybody would be different. And in that moment, although I don't know I realized it consciously at the time, I made two decisions. Number one, that would never be me. I would not end in my life, would not end in poor health, from avoidable, if not avoidable, at least treatable. Right? A lot of these are lifestyle diseases. A lot of what we experience in the developed world of cardiovascular disease or even many cancers or diabetes or things like this are tied to, whether we're active, whether we eat. So I said, that will not be me. The other thing I said is I will do what I can to help others achieve at a high level without paying such a high price. So that's a big part of what the School for Good Living is how can we have the success and accomplishment and contribution that we want without trading everything, without trading our health, without trading our families, without trading our spirituality. Because he died at 64 years old. He didn't even make it to be a senior citizen.
Yeah.
And honestly, for a while after he passed, I was angry. I was like, I want my dad, like he didn't come to my Little League games. He didn't come to my science fairs. Largely, I think because he was so busy working and serving others. And I didn't resent him for that because I knew that was the way he showed love. But I also knew that was not how I wanted to be. And I think many others, they want to have this success, but they don't want to pay that price,
Yeah. That's hard, that's a crazy journey, man.
Yeah.
And really though, it seems like all things happen to make us who we are, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And really you've turned a lot of those lessons into some pretty amazing things, man.
Yeah, well, thank you. Every life is amazing when it's viewed up close. I'm convinced.
I'd love for you to share with the guests maybe just a few specific points of wisdom that you've experienced, and maybe that's something that you could share so they can apply that to avoid the same problems. Because as being most of the viewers out there have a desire to be or are entrepreneurs or executives, and they're just running a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
And in the story of how what happened with your dad and how you've learned from that, maybe there's a few things you could share.
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that I constantly reflect on is this idea of, feeling peace. And really, I call it peace. Other people might call it something else. They might call it satisfaction. They might call it happiness. They might call it contentment. But one of the first things that really changed my life is the realization that every emotion is available in every moment. That they're all here right now. Everything from ecstasy to despair is present in this room. And nothing has to happen for us to experience that. We think it does. We think, if somebody walked in this room with a plate of cookies and they smelled really nice and they said some kind things, that then we'd be happy or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or conversely, if we got some really tragic news like, our spouse was leaving us or we had a cancer diagnosis, then we would be depressed or something. And it often seems like the basis of our experience is outside us. And there's a lot of life reinforces that,
Mm-hmm.
But to really understand that we are the creators of our experience in every moment and every emotion is available in every moment. Now, it doesn't mean it's necessarily easy to access joy on demand or gratitude or peace, but the idea that it's there and that you have the ability to access it and perhaps even the responsibility.
My curiosity is just killing me right now. So how do you do it? What are some techniques, man?
So one of the ways that we began to do it is by being aware of where we are right now.
Okay.
Like what is the emotion that we're experiencing? And one of the things that I sometimes say is that I think emotions are like spiritual locations. That we go places, we talk about it. Like I was feeling high or I was down. I was really down. Like we talk about like direction and movement and place when it comes to emotions. So part of it is being aware of where we are. And more specifically, where are we habitually? Where do we live? Because we all have kind of a range that we live within. It's so familiar and comfortable that we even call it's our personality. I'm an angry person or I'm a happy person. Like we think of it that way, right? But we don't have a deep vocabulary to discuss these things. We're not taught this by many of us by our parents or in school.
Mm-hmm.
This emotional fluency. So part of it is just cultivating a greater awareness of where are we. Then it's saying, well, where do I want to be? Where would I prefer to be? And when you're able to name it, it's kind of this in coaching, there's this famous, line of name it and claim it. But if you don't know where you want to be, the odds of getting there are pretty nil. And even if you got there, how would you know? It's kind of, right? So it starts by knowing where are you, where do you want to be? And then really the model here is one that Tony Robbins teaches. And I think it's profound. He calls it the triad. And it has to do with these three things. It's your physiology, it's your focus, and it's your language. Because if you think about it, in every moment, you're doing something with your body. You're doing something with your breath. You're doing something with your posture. You have some level of rest or hydration. So everything that you're doing with your body is going to contribute to the emotion that you're experiencing. Everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? So the fastest way to shift any emotion is by shifting your body somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is with your focus, your attention is always somewhere. The question is where it is conscious or unconscious. Is it intentional or unintentional? Are you focusing on the shot you just missed? Or are you focusing on the possibility of making it, on that sales call, on the difference you can make in your client's life, or how bad it might suck to be rejected. Like, where you focus is going to change how you feel. And it sounds pretty simple, and I think it is, but doing it consciously and not compulsively or habitually. That's the second thing, is your focus. And the third one is your language. So what are you saying about it, or what are you making it mean? Right? Even Aristotle said that the two things that differentiate humans from animals are reason and language. So there's always a linguistic pattern. We're always saying something. So is it, this is great, or I might fail, right? Or why me, or not again. There's always something that we're saying. But again, are we saying the thing consciously or unconsciously? And when we take an awareness of where are we in those areas of our physiology, our focus, our language, and we make that conscious, and we do it habitually and with intensity, that can become the new us. And that's not necessarily obvious, right? Nobody taught me that until Tony Robbins taught me that. But it's pretty profound. And when you realize that every emotion is a result of those things, it's the recipe or the formula to create emotion is those things. If you recreate those things, you'll recreate the emotion.
Let me recap this really quick, because this is strange. I remember doing the Tony Robbins personal power program when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
And he talked about that, and it kind of glazed over. Maybe some of it stuck. But there's some rules I established for myself that I've been doing, but I wasn't actually, now that you've re-brought this up, it clarifies this. So physically, with my body, when I talk to people, I try to smile.
Yeah.
I try to be like, yeah, when it comes to focus, being conscious of what's happening, what needs to happen. And then the language is important, because people always ask you, hey, how you doing today? And then people sometimes say, oh, it's been a rough one, or oh, it's hump day, or TGIF, or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I remember from that Tony thing, listening to years ago, my reply would always be awesome, or phenomenal, or I'm on it, or whatever that is. But as long as it's a positive language response.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't subscribe to positive thinking, right? So if we just if we're feeling like crap and we put this, oh, I'm great, mask over it, that doesn't necessarily work, right? But if we do this with awareness and we shift the other parts, then we can shift into that experience, and it can be as authentic as whatever other experience we have. Because again, and this goes along with it to me, is this idea, and this is a pretty big claim, that if you can say it or you can think it, it's not true. So you go, the words that you use to describe your experience become your experience. If you say, I'm awesome, and your focus is also somewhere that is congruent with being awesome, and your body is also in a posture of awesome, then the truth of your experience can align behind awesome. But it's your choice to say, when somebody asks how you doing, oh, it's TGIF, oh man, I made it through another week, versus today is a great day, right? Neither one of those is true beyond your declaration of it, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So that's when I say, if you can say it or think it, it's not true. It's a pretty bold claim. But what I really mean by that is, at some level, they're both true and they're both false. It's just a choice.
That's absolutely true. I do have an alternate response.
Okay.
You have those days you just get the crap beat out of you, right? Like terrible things happen, right? So I always say, oh, I got my teeth knocked out, but I'm going to spit out the blood, and freaking make it great.
Yeah.
And that's way maybe to admit, that's been crazy, right?
Well, we all have things that happen that we don't like, no question. So I don't dispute that at all.
So I have a question for you too. As you evolve what you're doing now, what's next? What's the next level for you? Because as my friend, I keep seeing you growing, man. This is cool.
Really, one of the things that I'm focusing on right now is helping people do the great work of their lives. And how can I create a community of people who are committed to doing that, but also committed to supporting others in doing that. That's what I'm really curious about and focus on right now, is bringing people together. This year is going to be the 4th year that I've hosted a mindfulness morning once a month, every month.
Wow.
So I'm already bringing people together to practice and connect, practice things like mindfulness. What I'm just now beginning to do is to bring people together around doing great work and supporting others in doing great work.
It's pretty cool.
So, that's
your whole tribe. That's what you're
Yeah.
So where can people find you and be involved and get to know what's going on?
So people can visit goodliving.com.
Okay, that's an easy one.
Yeah, goodliving.com is the web address for the School for Good Living. And people can also find me at bryanmiller.com, which is BRYAN Miller.com.
This is cool. Any last thoughts, though, or tips for the viewers out there? You got so much, but we have limited time. But
sure.
Is there any last thing you want to leave everybody with?
Oh, man. I think, given that we just came through Valentine's Day, I know people might be watching this any time of year, but this is what's on my mind, and I just had the chance to share a message with a group about this as well. And I'm reminded of the power and value of our intimate relationships. Now, it's easy to say that, but I just want to offer, you watching this idea, if you haven't already, kind of discovered this or arrived at this kind of idea, that no matter what you accomplish, no matter what you acquire, no matter what you become, if you either don't have an intimate relationship, a deep, loving connection with another person, or you have one, but it's regularly a source of pain and frustration, that you won't be as happy as you could be. You won't taste the depth and richness available in life. And that's one thing to say that, right? You can go, okay, great. You've told me something. Now what do I do about it? But what I want to offer you is this idea that it is possible to have a deeply fulfilling, intimate relationship, and so much of it depends on how you show up inside your relationship. For me, my transformation was from believing that relationships were like garments, that some of them fit me, some of them I was okay to be seen in public in, but eventually they all wore out. That was a belief I had that I wasn't aware that I had for years. And inevitably, all of my romantic relationships, they wore out. I discarded them, and I got a new one. And then it would wear out. I would get tired of it, and I would discard it. I would get another one. That happened for years and years and years. And then what I realized was that was a disempowering, unconscious belief. And when I was able to find it, identify it, release it, choose a new one, this idea that relationships are actually our greatest gift. So from a garment to a gift, and saying that your intimate relationship is actually your greatest opportunity for spiritual growth. Why? Because it's where you stand to be hurt the deepest, to be seen for who you really are, to love another person unconditionally. Many of us think we want to do something great in the world, but we're kind of a jerk, maybe with the people right at home. Sometimes we're not as patient, we're not as kind, we're not as thoughtful, but there is no truer training ground for showing up in all of the beauty and brilliance that you can as a human being than your intimate relationship. And then as you go out from your kids or your siblings or your parents and stuff like this, but that is such a gift and you can cultivate it. So if you haven't made the choice to make your relationship extraordinary, if you're still doing that pattern that many of us do of, the grass is always greener or the next one will be better, and realizing that where you are right now is perfect, for your learning and your growth, and living with that awareness and that belief can be the difference in all of life.
That's gold, man. It was getting me thinking too, pretty deep about those home relations, because sometimes we get caught up, right?
Well, you've been married 20-something?
Long time, almost 30 years.
30 years, man. So
but you have your ups and downs,
Yeah, well, that's life.
You got to bring yourself back to that point of value. Wow, it's incredible. Bryan, thank you, man.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I always feel so much smarter after talking to you. Review the notes here. Thank you so much. So, guys and girls, take a moment here to watch this and take notes, though. And if you didn't get everything, because I know Bryan went over a lot, watch it over again, take notes. As you know, there's nowhere to put your credit card in here, or you don't have to buy anything. But we do ask that you do a couple of things. One is execute. Okay, so if you've learned something here that's valuable, go do something about it today, even if it's only about one thing. And two, share it with friends and loved ones that may benefit as well. So you've been watching Dan's Millionaire Code. Thank you, Bryan, again. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Dan.
And we'll see you guys again next week.